Hi, this is Evan from WCCF Tech, and the Intel Core i9-13900 Raptor Lake CPU tested is an engineering sample like the one we saw earlier. It features an 8 plus 16 core configuration. These include 8 P cores or performance cores based on the Raptor code and 16 E cores based on the Gracemont core architecture. The Core i9-13900 Raptor Lake CPU carries 16 megabytes of L2 cache for the P cores, 2 megabytes per core, and 16 megabytes of L2 cache for the E cores. This gives us a total of 32 megabytes of L2 cache, which is combined with the L3 cache will offer us a total of 68 megabytes of cache, which is rumored to be labeled as the game cache. In terms of clock speeds, the Intel Core i9-13900 Raptor Lake CPU has a clock speed that's rated at 3.8 gigahertz. Do note that the P cores for this engineering sample ran at a base clock of 1.4 gigahertz and a max boost clock speed of 3.8 for specifically the P cores, while the E cores were split with 2 clusters running at 2.8 gigahertz and running actually significantly slower at 1.0 gigahertz. So we can already see some inconsistency in the clock speeds. This is a non-K 65 watt part, so it will carry a much lower clock speed. Plus, this is also an engineering sample, so clocks are expected to be actually lower and inconsistent. The final chips are expected to yield clock speeds of up to 6 gigahertz. Both the Intel Core i9-13900 Raptor Lake and Intel Core i9-12900K Alder Lake CPUs were tested on the Z690 platform with a pair of G-Skill DDR5 5200 memory and the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3090 graphics cards. The Raptor Lake chip has not been released yet, so there's no proper BIOS available for it yet. As such, clock speed shouldn't be as stable as the final chip. For testing, XPreview had the Core i9-12900K locked at 3.8 GHz across all cores for a much more fair comparison. In terms of performance, the single-core performance of the Intel Core i9 Raptor Lake CPU is slower when compared to the Intel Core i9-12900K Alder Lake CPU chip. This is because the Alder Lake CPU also has the full backing of an optimized BIOS and a higher TDP limit versus the non-K Raptor Lake chip. And also, as said before, the clock speeds on this Raptor Lake CPU aren't stable and aren't consistent. In multi-threaded testing, though, the 50% higher core count does boost the performance by 20%, but the final retail chips should offer even better performance than this engineering sample that we see here. Looking at the gaming benchmark, the Intel Core i9-13900 is mostly on par with the Core i9-12900K, and the differences are within the margin of error. With that said, the Raptor Lake CPUs are going to offer increased cache sizes and faster clock speeds, which should help tremendously with gaming and games in general. There are recent rumors that we will be getting up to 6 GHz clock speeds on the flagship models. The Intel 13th generation Raptor Lake desktop CPUs are expected to launch later this year, 2022, and will be supported by the existing LGA 1700/1800 socketed platforms with both DDR5 and DDR4 DRAM support. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon for more fantastic tech news.